by all of our allies. It's one of the reasons we're making even more significant, because they're demonstrating real value for every dollar we spend at CSE. And we believe that by spending more dollars, as is reflected in these estimates and in our new DPU, is going to produce real value for Canadians.
Thank you, Ms. Blount. With that, we will have to bring our first hour to a close. Thank you, Minister, for your contribution to this animated conversation. Yes, and we appreciate it. We appreciate your appearance here from time to time, sometimes more than other times. So with that, we will suspend, let the minister leave, and then Mr. Matthews and his team will continue on with the next hour. Statement, and do you wish to introduce anybody that is now at your table?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very quickly, I think the Minister already covered it, but we have Mr. Crosby, Ms. Crosby, respectively in charge of procurement, as well as our Chief Financial Officer, the Vice Chief, and Madame Xavier, as well as her Chief Financial Officer, Monsieur Saint-Pierre. And with that, let's get on with the questions.
Okay, Mr. Bazan opens with a 6 minutes round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I know a number of you are either retiring or moving on. I want to thank you all for your service and for your time at Department of National Defence and Canadian Armed Forces, and for serving Canada and serving our troops. Although it's starting to look like with so many people running away, it looks like a ship might be sinking. But no? Okay. Everybody's man overboard. But anyway, I want to go back to the issue of readiness, which has been a story. And a major concern is that we are now sending our forces into Latvia without that battle group battalion level training that we routinely have done at Wainwright. So my concern is, how is this impacting our ability? I know we're saying it's great to exercise with our allies, but I can tell you that our allies are going out there battle ready. and I question whether or not our guys and gals are in tip-top fighting condition when they don't have that time to train we have routinely done in the past. General?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. Certainly, I would absolutely agree with you. Readiness is critically important for your ability to be able to execute on operations, and you must be ready to be able to execute on operations. The mechanisms through which you get ready and are ready, I think, are different depending upon the organization that you're part of, be it the Air Force, the Army. We know the key components to readiness, which are personnel, equipment, training, and the sustainment elements that you need to be able to deliver on operations. And certainly, I would say we have traditionally used the series of exercises in the West as one of the training and readiness functions for the Canadian Army as they were moving into their high readiness phase going forward. The stand-up and the move of the battle group to brigade in Latvia with the many partners that we have over there is also causing us to reassess what is the best way to do both the individual and then collective training that needs to be done to be able to operate. We have heard previously that it had quite an impact on families.
We talk about readiness, and the forces are only sitting at 61% readiness, and the amount of equipment that we have available that is ready and able to use is now under 60%. And we're always supposed to have, at least one battalion at high readiness and, another battalion training up to go into high readiness as a constant circulation just for protection of Canada and being ready to deploy if called upon. So if we aren't training up our current battalion and brigade group that is in Latvia, where are we sitting with the level of readiness within the forces that are sitting domestically?
So you are correct. We have people sitting at different levels of readiness. As you come off of high readiness and you return back into a lower state of readiness, that's sort of a bit of a reconstitution time for people to do training, for equipment to be repaired, that sort of thing. The next group are on the road to high readiness, while another group are sitting at high readiness moving forward. And so this type of I would say, a progression towards readiness is for the Army, how they do the managed readiness program that they have. Whether they're...
Army at high readiness, and that we are definitely beyond those numbers. How many fighter pilots do we have today?
I'm afraid I couldn't tell you exactly the number of fighter pilots that we have.
Would you be able to get that information to the committee?
Absolutely.
If you can get that information, can you ballpark it?
I would say there's currently less fighter pilots available than the Commander of the Air Force would currently wish to be able to do both the missions that we have today and the training for the transition to the new F-35.
Yeah, so we're at 40, more than 40, less than 40?
I would not be able to give you the accurate number.
Okay. General Eyre recently complained that the use of military personnel in fighting wildfires in Canada has become, in some cases, wickedly wasteful. And he went on to say, I made it quite clear to other departments that our capacity to do what we did last year is not the same, especially with reduced readiness and increased deployments to Latvia. And he told senior officers on a video conference on April 23rd, we're not going to have the same forces available for the scale and duration of response. So what are we doing to correct this in making sure that we can get back to a high level of readiness just from the standpoint of doing what the Canadian Armed Forces is meant to do, which is be prepared to fight? And then what's the long-term goal here on supporting domestic operations through Operation Lentis?
You're 100%. The Canadian Armed Forces does need to be prepared and ready to fight, and that's that mission which we can do that others cannot within the environment. That being said, Canada has always turned to its Canadian Armed Forces in times of extraordinary crisis to be able to support domestically, and we have IRUs that are established within the provinces to have that mission going forward. It is challenging, and last summer's wildfires certainly did see Canadian Armed Forces members deployed for quite an extended period of time, longer than we had previously seen.
General, can I just ask a quick question, if you can? Don't have time to answer, if you can provide the information to committee or answer it in a follow-up question from one of my colleagues. Is can you give us the current recruitment numbers that we have in the Canadian Armed Forces, Air Force, Navy, and Army, and then also do that from the reserve standpoint? My understanding is that we're just barely treading water right now, and we're still over 15,000 troops short.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne, Madame Lambropoulos, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for being here with us to answer some questions today. So Minister Blair spoke about a $1 billion ask for cyber mandates, and so I'm wondering if you could share, with the fact that in the future we will be seeing more and more cyber threats, and this is going to be a bigger issue. How exactly, can you specify how the money will be spent, and also what the communications security establishment's role is in responding to cyber threats and cyber incidents?
Chair, thank you for the question. Real pleasure to be here to answer the question. So yes, in the mains, we have been given an increase of almost $76 million. However, as was stated by the minister, the departmental defense update, the defense policy update, gives us an additional almost $1 billion over the next 5 years investing in our cyber defense and in our foreign cyber operations. Part of our role in terms of what we do as an organization, we have a 5-part mandate, and part of that mandate includes the cybersecurity information assurance cyber defense landscape, and we take that role extremely seriously. We play that role in the sense that we do it for Government of Canada systems. We also pay attention to that for critical infrastructure, for private sector, and anything else that the nation needs us to do in support of cyber defense. What we really work hard at is really promoting cyber resilience, and so that's where we do a lot of that work in partnership with the critical infrastructure, with the Government of Canada, with private sector, with municipalities and provinces and territories. So that is part of the role that we play. In terms of the investments that are made specifically in the mains, $20 million of that funding is associated to the investment made related to the Indo-Pacific strategy, where CSC will have a role it plays, specifically linked to signals intelligence and the foreign intelligence that we'll continue to provide to senior decision makers. But as well, it's also ongoing operations for the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which is our cyber center, which provides that role that I was speaking to, in particular related to information assurance and cyber defense for Canada and critical infrastructure sectors. So we do see that our role continues to be important. We do see that cyber itself plays a role in warfare, and that is why it is good that we have the foreign cyber operation authorities that we have, both in active and defense cyber authorities that are authorized by the minister through ministerial authorities and supported by the Department of Foreign Affairs.
So I guess when you say resilience, you're really talking about prevention, right? Like ways of ensuring that our systems can't be breached, I guess?
Correct. So one of the things we really work hard at is promoting various ways in which one can protect themselves, and we have the cyber.gc.ca website, which really does that in terms of looking at it from an individual all the way to critical infrastructure. And no matter what type of person you are, coming in as someone who's very well aware of what are the cyber threats that could have, to somebody who's less aware, that's what that website is helpful for. But that's in addition to all of the partnerships and information sessions that we offer to critical infrastructure sectors in particular, where we know that critical infrastructure are at risk because of all that we've seen from the various publications we've put out and what we've learned from the war in Ukraine. We know that critical infrastructure is at risk, and we've put out many guidelines and publications out with regards to this, and we know that we need to continue to build that resilience so that when, because the answer is more when rather than if an incident may occur, we ensure that we can recover quickly, which is what that resilience really means.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. You also mentioned the Indo-Pacific strategy, and Minister Blair also spoke about Operation Horizon, which I believe is tied to that strategy and to that region. I understand the importance of Canada playing an important role in that region and in the conflict there. Can you speak to what Canada's military presence in that region will look like over the next year?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, I can speak to that question. As part of the Indo-Pacific strategy, Canada agreed to increase its military presence in the region from a naval perspective by having 3 deployments into the region over every year moving forward. That is for us currently with the Montreal to be followed by the Vancouver this summer and then the Ottawa later on this fall. In addition to that, there's capacity building exercises with partners within the region that we engage with, training and activities that also support the women, peace, and security initiatives that we believe are important for all of us as allies and partners to be talking and engaging on. And so these types of engagements from capacity building, deployments with our allies, participating in exercises, and sharing our experiences, these are all military activities that you will see this year and in subsequent years as well.
Ms. Lambropoulos, Madame Michaud, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I have a few questions regarding regarding Operation Lentis. It's not a secret that over the last few years, there's been more requests to the armed forces to act when there are natural disasters in Canada. This seems to increase, and it's not even in the numbers. I'm talking about the pandemic, of course, as well. So we can believe that there will be internal emergencies, Canadian domestic emergencies, that will require the intervention of the forces. In the departmental plan, it says that the forces are a last recourse when there are domestic emergencies. Is it still the vision within the department as we speak, even though we have to acknowledge that Canada will be faced with more natural disasters over the coming years? And what is the proportion of investments here in Canada? I'm sure when we're talking about investment in forces in Canada, we're thinking about those natural disasters. But there's also all those strategies regarding cybersecurity to protect Canada from interference from abroad. So can you clarify for us basically how the investments are divided? How much money internationally, how much money domestically? Maybe I can start an answer, and I'm sure my counterpart will be able to follow up if needed, and Ms. Xavier as well. Both are possible, of course. And it's true that the CAF are a last recourse when they are natural disasters.
The demand on the armed forces for domestic responses is as manageable as possible. If they're needed, they will be there. But when you think about forest fires, I'll let my colleague, Madame Xavier, talk about cyber protection, but forest fires in particular, you have to look at a whole of government and multi-levels of government type solution. Better planning, better preparedness, leaning on civil society. So when, once all of those tools are used, if there is still something to be done, then the armed forces will be the last resort, and they will get called, without a doubt. And then once they are called, we want to make sure that they're staying for only as long as needed. And once their critical work is done, they can move on and reconstitute and do the other things. It also speaks to reconstitution for the armed forces in general. The more numbers we have, the more at the ready, the more we're able to respond. But I think it starts with a broader whole of government, multiple levels of government, as well as civil society, and how we best protect ourselves and prepare ourselves for whatever the domestic urgency is. Vice, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think Deputy Mr. Chair, he's pretty much covered most issues. As the esteemed colleague said, we are there as a force of last resort when needed, and I think Canada and the Canadian Armed Forces have always come when the call has come in a true crisis, as we have in evacuations in the north as well. Thank you.
That's the Domaine cyber.
Regarding cybersecurity, I'll answer your question. As we said earlier, we recognize that it's paramount that we build resiliency in our infrastructure, because it is accurate if, for example, in the hydro sector or in the energy sector, if anything goes on, this will have a direct impact on citizens of Canada. So that's why we're working extremely closely with these critical infrastructure sectors so that they understand what the threats are. We ask them to subscribe to our services so that they're aware of the latest threats, because we have access to a lot of information that we need to communicate to them. But we also ask them that they communicate with us when they are victims of a cyber incident so that we can support them accordingly. We meet with a lot of organizations on a regular basis, mostly in the energy sector, in the hydro sector, in the financial sector, telecom sector. We meet with all these partners because they are critical infrastructures, and we need to be able to help them and build resiliency should there be something going on in a province or a territory. And of course, we work very closely with all provinces and territories to better educate them so that they know how they can support their infrastructure as well. Thank you very much for your answer. In fact, regarding natural disasters, I understand that you're there as a last recourse. It's not your priority, because this could have an impact on military capabilities, also on recruitment as well, I'm sure, and we know there's a shortage of staff. So in some cases, well, in all cases rather, will we always prioritize national and international operations? We understand that geopolitical situation has an impact with the various operations that Canada is partaking of around the world. Is it possible that sooner or later there won't be any CAF staff for domestic emergencies, for example, floods or forest fires? Is what is going on at the international level be prioritized all the time?
It is a constant prioritization of where is the demand coming from for the Canadian Armed Forces Services. What is it the government would like us to do? What have we made commitments towards? How would we manage crises that arise and come forward? And what tools are available to us to support that moving forward? The training that's required often that is so helpful in natural disasters and in emergencies is just a formed group who can communicate, who can move themselves to a location and be prepared to be involved in a domestic disaster response. And that doesn't necessarily require the high level of readiness in training and skill sets that are needed for
have to
deployed
leave the
operations.
answer there. Ms. Madison, 6 minutes.
Thank you. In Justice Arbour's report, she clearly warned about conflict of interest within the Office of the Integrate Complaint and Conflict Management Structure. She made that clear that the office cannot investigate and provide advice to both the senior leadership and survivors, and their structural position makes them an easy threat for chain of command interference. The Ottawa Citizen reported last week on the horrific failure of justice by the department. Officer X, an unnamed Navy officer, had repeated complaints filed and investigated within the CAF and to military police going back to 2006. An internal ICCM report then found that this information was bundled up with 14 years of multiple allegations and MP investigations against Officer X that had resulted in zero action. These allegations reached as high as the head of the Royal Canadian Navy, Vice Admiral Topshee, without any action taken. So we wouldn't even know about this incident if the report wasn't leaked to the media. That harassment continues to date. It's worsening for those who are coming forward and who are calling it out. And for all we know, there are so many more horrific cases being covered up. So can you tell the committee whether or not the department has reviewed this internal ICCM report and what steps have been taken to get justice for Officer X's victims?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I guess I want to reinforce that we think any type of misconduct within the department is something that we take seriously, and there shouldn't be instances in which members' complaints of inappropriate behavior or conduct should go ignored. As it pertains to the Officer X, I can't tell you that I know the specific ICCM report to which you refer. It did not come to me directly as part of this process, but this issue has been looked at quite closely within the department. I can't disclose details exactly, specifically about this particular case because there are some privacy considerations that are part of that, but we do take all allegations very, very seriously.
Deputy Minister, I would assume that you would have seen the report, or what can you say about this?
I have not seen the report. My understanding is there's a process underway, and as the Vice has already said, can't share more because of privacy, but no, I have not seen the detailed report in question. Certainly aware of the file, though.
The cover-ups by chain of command and the Department on Officer X are the latest example, of course, of barriers that survivors face. They need an independent outside office to turn to when they're wronged in this way. They shouldn't, in my opinion, be asked to turn to the ICCM for help when they know that the chain of command is actively covering up an incident, especially to that same monitoring board that is providing advice to the chain of command. They need the independent external watchdog, which I have a bill that aims to do that. But in the interim, CAF members and DND employees need that champion within the Office of the Ombudsman. So I'm certainly concerned about the fact that during testimony, the current Ombudsman, Gregory Lick, talked to us about finding his replacement. He announced his retirement. He certainly will be missed, and it takes an active, robust search for his replacement. So we've been told that this hasn't started, this replacement search, given the fact that there's so much going on in terms of the CAF throughout his tenure. When can we expect that process at least to start to find a new ombuds?
So I cannot give you an exact date, Mr. Chair. The work to launch the search, it has started, but the search is not yet launched. There will be interim measures put in place to ensure continuity while a replacement for Mr. Lick is found.
There's been a concern, of course, that there would be a return to previous applicants, or that there wouldn't be a new search taking place. Is that currently the case?
The process in terms of how it's followed to select Mr. Lick's replacement it's an appointment that is outside of my control, but all I will share is the work to launch. The search for a new candidate has started, and there'll be an interim measure put in place.
The minister earlier touched on this in terms of Madame Lalonde's question on Bill C-66, which will enact our Justice Arbour's Recommendation 5. But we know that correcting the justice system isn't just about bringing that justice for so many women that were failed by the institution. In fact, we've seen so many cases recently of women having their cases stayed due to CAF delays in transferring files. Other women have reported their cases being rejected. What is being done by the department to make amends for current and historic cases that happened before this bill will be enacted?
Maybe a couple of thoughts here, Mr. Chair, and the Vice may wish to jump in. Number one, lots of reasons why cases do not get transferred, and the member has outlined a few of them, but there's others as well. I'm not aware of any measures in place beyond the numerous class actions that are underway to look backwards. This is a going forward change that we are looking forward to implementing.
The Defense Policy Update signals changes to military equipment procurement. $10.2 billion in spending for infrastructure and maintenance, $300 million for the Canadian Forces Housing Agency, but there's no commitment on reforms to the outsourcing and contracting practices for those maintenance services. UNDE and PIPSI leadership came to this committee and said that the government has no meaningful value for money analysis on these contracts, and the Defence Construction Canada procurement practices mirror the ongoing ArriveCan scandal. The department spent $5 billion on contracting out services instead of on public servants.
Ms. Masson, you're well past your time.
Okay, I'll pick it up later. Thank you.
With that, colleagues, I'm reliably informed that we'll be voting at 1:06, which means bells at 12:36, which means that we basically have a 15-minute round and then the vote on the estimates. So, Mr. Falk, I'm sorry to say, 3 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, even for those 3 minutes. Thank you to all of you for coming to committee and for your service to our country. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin with Chief Xavier for a moment. Our partnership with Five Eyes is extremely important. I think it's benefited us, and we've been a huge benefit to them. The minister earlier reported that your department, CSE, is first in class. We're the best of the best. We're as good as it gets. Were we invited to participate in AUKUS?
So, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So I want to echo exactly what the minister said, in the sense that I lead an organization where everybody every day comes in very passionate about the work that they do, and they give their 110% on a daily basis to be able to protect Canadians.
The chair has really clipped my time here. I just want to know if we declined to participate or if we weren't invited.
So from a cyber perspective, we regularly work with our other eyes, all of our eyes, but in particular the UK, the US, and Australia. And we are ready to provide additional support in Pillar 2 of AUKUS when the appropriate time comes where the government decides that they want to do that. But I can tell you that from a cyber perspective, we're very much a Canuckus. I feel that we work from a foreign cyber operations and active cyber operations collectively with them and able to do the work that we do in defending our what Canada believes is important from a partnership perspective.
Okay, so we haven't been asked.
We've been asked to work with them with the UK and the US on a series of foreign cyber operations. These are the types of work we do, as well as foreign intelligence. So linked to our mandate, we are definitely working with those eyes.
Okay, thank you. To Mr. Matthews, are you prepared to table the numbers that demonstrate the 1.76% with this committee by the end of the week?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, those numbers are already on the department's website, but happy to share with the committee. Just maybe a reminder that that's a two-part formula, what the department is forecasted to spend, as well as some spending by other departments, up against the OECD predictions or projections on GDP, but those numbers are on the website and we will share.
Okay, good. And to the General, Mr. Bazan asked you specifically about fighter pilots. Can you tell me in general what our pilot situation is like across the Air Force? Like, do you know the numbers? How much are we short?
Again, I would not be able to give you the exact numbers of pilots for each of the platforms that we have pilots for. We can certainly provide those numbers moving forward. One of the big challenges that we have as well is that as we move from some platforms to others is a transition time that's required, and we have to train those crews to be able to operate on the new platforms, and that puts pressure.
Do we have adequate personnel?
We still require more people in the same way that the Canadian Armed Forces is short personnel. We are short personnel within the Air Force.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I'm assuming the bells are going to go off shortly. Do I have your consent to proceed regardless? Okay, thank you. Mr. Collins, 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And a couple quick questions for Chief Xavier on the cyber issues that have been referenced in the committee here today and the resources allocated to the same. My questions are along the lines of the disinformation campaigns that have been generated by Russia and others to undermine our institutions here in Canada and to undermine the government's support on many files, including our support for Ukraine. And much of that disinformation is spread on social media platforms, and it's meant to change public opinion and has in certain quarters of the country. And we're seeing increasing amount of social media messages from our constituents, people who've bought into these campaigns that have been put out by Russia. And I'm just wondering the initiatives that CSE is taking in terms of combating that with the resources that have been provided in the mains as well as DPU, and what role parliamentarians can play from an education perspective to get at those campaigns that we know are increasing almost by the day.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. And indeed, we do see misinformation and disinformation as one of these ubiquitous threats that we know we live through on a daily basis. As part of the threats to democratic processes that we published in December 2023, we highlight that mis and disinformation is going to be pervasive throughout all the various activities that we see, either from a democratic process or as well from a warfare perspective. So in terms of disinformation campaigns, the Government of Canada has put in place a series of campaigns of which we have led on their behalf, including up until March 2024 of this year. And that website highlights different ways in which Canadians can get involved in terms of better understanding how they can combat mis and disinformation. A big part of it is education, and we work that with other government partners, but recognize it's a whole of society situation. And so to your point about the role MPs can play, really continue to ensure that you are also using information that you can see from a base of facts, or use more than one source of information. And that's what we really try to encourage on the website, is ensuring that you have a good sense of where the information is coming from. Look for more than one source. One of the campaigns we ran was, if it gives you a bit of a rethink, or it's not, are you asking the critical question about the information looking at, or if your eyebrow raises, then you might be looking at information that could be of concern to you. And so we really highlight and recommend looking at more than one piece of information. We have used our foreign cyber operations to be able to disrupt information. We've also sanitized intelligence to ensure that information is made aware, especially with regards to the Russia disinformation campaign that they've run. And these are various aspects of our toolkit that we'll continue to use to ensure that information is factual.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I?
Unfortunately, it's 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. 1.5 minutes, Madame Michaud.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to hear you on the 155mm artillery shells. There's a $4.4 billion contract that has been given to INT Defense and General Dynamics to develop a strategy to increase the 155mm production. But last year, there was a $4.8 million investment that could have improved from 3,000 to 5,000 production of the artillery shells, 66% increase. It seems that this strategy is simply preventing us from ramping up production, but Ukraine cruelly needs these. So why are we investing in this strategy? What are we waiting for? When actually will we reap the dividends? And is the objective to increase production to support Ukraine? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Yes, it's clear that the objective is to increase the production capacity, but at the same time, we want to procure a different product, which is an improvement on the previous product.
To increase production, but there's also the investment announced in the Defense Policy Update is about an investment in infrastructure to also start hopefully producing a different kind of round that's actually a better quality, better range, etc. That's going to take time. One of the things we have learned from watching Ukraine and the response of Canada and allies is we've all given what's on our shelves, and standing up new manufacturing takes time. And so we are starting the process of investing in infrastructure to increase production, but also get an improved type of round. But that will not be overnight. It's going to take months and months of work to get there, probably years.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews, Ms. Mass, and 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I was trying to get to in the end of my last round ultimately was the fact that there has been a great deal of money spent on outsourcing, and it's not being spent or there isn't being as much spent within the Department on public services and public servants. So we're talking about signing off on $10.5 billion in terms of these contractors and so on. There's been countless examples of P3 failures in the Department of National Defense. We have the CSC building fiasco, the Montreal Supply Depot. So now the Defense Policy Update and Budget 2024, there's again billions of dollars 4 major P3s to provide military housing, as an example. So what do you have in terms of evidence that these will be far more cost-effective and successful, considering we have seen so many examples that that is not the case?
Points here, Mr. Chair, and I know we're tight on time. Number one, the size of the public service or public servants inside defense has grown, as well as spending on contracts as our budget has grown, so both have been increasing. As we look to launch new products or projects, we look at basically most effective way to deliver. Sometimes that's through public servants, sometimes it's through contractors, sometimes it's through a mix. And so that analysis or options analysis is ongoing. We know on things like housing, we are in a rush to build quickly, and doing things the way they've been done in the past will not work. So you will see a different approach on housing, so we can start to deal with that problem in an effective manner.
Okay, we're going to have to unfortunately leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Mr. Kelly, 3 minutes.
Picking up right there, the budget contained $0 for new housing in each of the next 2 years. So how is that a new approach? That seems to be exactly the same old approach.
So I think there's a couple of ways here, Mr. Chair. New money, which will come, certainly helps, but you can also look at how it's delivered. There is existing money in the main estimates for infrastructure, for housing. Can we leverage that more effectively, more quickly to generate new builds?
But it's correct that there is zero in the budget.
There's money in the defense policy update for infrastructure.
Not this year or next year, though.
We have existing money for infrastructure.
Okay. So Canadians had the I think the embarrassing spectacle of an allied ambassador telling a national television audience that Canada has moved within NATO from being a bit of an outlier to being the outlier in the entire alliance. Now, setting aside the issue of there being no plan to get to 2%, I'd like to go back to, I think it was Mr. Falk's question about how the 1.76% of GDP calculation is arrived at. Many observers and analysts are having a tough time adding up what's in the budget and estimates and getting to 1.76% quite a few years down the road. So can you tell us more about how this is calculated, or let Canadians know how they can check your math?
Quick answer, it is on the departmental website.
Okay, where? Like a little more specific, because people are having trouble finding this.
We will send the link to the committee members in the backup, and it's basically forecasted spending on a cash basis compared against the forecasted GDP for Canada as calculated by the OECD.
Okay, thank you. We haven't had a clear answer from the minister on the delivery of additional items that have been announced. We get a lot of announcements, but no delivery dates. Will Canada's order of artillery shells, the quadrupled order announced in December, will that be received before December of this year?
We will continue to receive ammunition we've ordered, but
okay, so you didn't answer my question.
I'm getting there,
okay.
Mr. Chair. These are long-term contracts to see the augmentation. I expect it will be sometime after 2024 before you see a ramp-up.
Okay, so it will not be in 2024, as the minister told this committee.
Say unequivocally, I'm saying, if you talk to the manufacturers, they're talking about 2-year lead times to order.
So the minister
products.
said 2024. It's not going to happen, though. You don't think?
There has been increased production, but before our stocks start to increase, it's going to take a while.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I'll take the final 3 minutes. I'll direct this question to General Allen. I thought that in all the back and forth here this morning, watching the most shocking statement the minister made was that there were 70,000 people wanting to get into the Canadian military in the last year, and we're only able to process 4,000 or 5,000. That's I find it borderline scandalous, frankly, that we have a bunch of young Canadians keen to join the military, and we can't even process them. So, what's the response to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, we always want to do what we can to reduce both the time and the process that's necessary to bring Canadians into the Canadian Armed Forces. I think in any recruiting process, and this certainly has been historically, not everybody who applies will be able to meet the standards that are necessary to join the Canadian Armed Forces, nor does everybody's interests necessarily stay the same. We know, however, that we have a role to play in making the recruiting process faster and easier so that people's interest does not go elsewhere. In the
to be honest with you, that sounds like a series of excuses. If I know that 70,000 people are outside the door and they want to get in, and by and large they're qualified, and we have a 16,000 person deficit, in other words, people are leaving quicker than they're being replaced, commitments to improving, like, it does sound like a series of excuses. And this committee has opined on this several times. And I don't understand why in 2024 we're not processing a lot of people a lot more quickly, because we desperately need them.
So I would agree with you, Mr. Chair. We need to take faster steps, and that indeed has been what's been happening over the last year. Changes to the requirements for applicants coming in with respect to changing the medical standard that's necessary has been underway, so that people with allergies, asthma, ADHD, and anxiety are no longer automatically not able to join based upon a medical standard moving forward. So that risk assessment has been made to ensure that we're not excluding Canadians who could operate effectively within the universality of service structure that we have. As it pertains to security clearances, we're trying to improve that process so that the time frame, as you know already, members are enrolled into the Canadian Armed Forces without the final security clearance. They have a reliability clearance that is done, and then we have the time between the time that they are enrolled to the time that they start their occupational training and need access to classified material that their security clearance can go through. I would say our paper-based processes are terribly antiquated and need to be replaced by the digital system, and the new online digital portal that has been created for applicants is one of the steps of many.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave that answer here, but what disturbs me is that you may be giving the same response this time next year, and maybe even the year after that, and that will be, I think from this committee's standpoint, completely unacceptable. But unfortunately,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have to bring this meeting to a close, or this part of the meeting to a close. I want to just, again, reiterate our committee's thanks to Mr. Matthews. Apparently, you're going over to the dark side now. And we're rather hoping that all requests for procurement and personnel from D&D will proceed expeditiously from now on. So thank you again. With that, I'll just let the witnesses leave. Colleagues, we're...
Mr. Crosby and General Allen. This is their last meeting as well.
Really?
Yeah, they're all
How do we
retiring.
Know? Oh, I didn't know.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, am I informed that the Crosby twins are finishing as well? Okay. And General Allen. Okay. Okay, well, colleagues, we got votes?
Oh, we're not adjourned yet, guys.
No, yeah. We're not adjourned. Marie France. All right. Yeah. So it's. I want to call the votes. I'd like to call the votes all at once, if I may. Shall the votes under Communications Security Establishment, the Department of National Defence, the Military Grievances External Review Committee,